Hello, and welcome back to Iscast. How are we? Hi, hello, how are we? Oh my gosh. Today, we are going to be finishing the first book in Maggie Stiefvater's series, The Raven Cycle, and the book being The Raven Boys, obviously. We are 80% of the way through, and we are finishing it today. Okay, I actually need to, calm down. Welcome back to my HG. Okay, I'll stop. Anyways, hi, hello, how are we? We're going to be reading this. We are on chapter 36. We have 20 for, we're technically at 81%, so we have 19% to go, but that's besides the point. Are you prepared? Emotionally? Physically? Other descriptors of how you might be ready? Are you sat down? Are you standing? Are you listening? I'm not going to do any more preamble. We're just going to get into this. Oh, wait, actually, I am going to do more preamble, but it's going to be analytical preamble. So, thus far, we have followed Gansey, Ronan, Adam, Blue, and Noah through this story. We have discovered a magical forest, Cape's Water, and we have discovered that Noah is dead. In case you forgot. I don't know why you would. It was pretty big last time. I don't know. But yeah. I mean, he did tell them. I've been dead for 7 years, ass shit. Okay. That's it. I don't know. Recap. And I will warn you. But you already knew probably because you were watching, listening, whatever you want to call it. Adam is being abused by his father, and that is very bad. But the way that it's handled in the story is very smart. I don't know. I don't know if I'm supposed to do anything more complex than that. I suppose I'm just supposed to warn in a way. Be like, yeah, I'm aware of this and so are you. But just reminding. Yeah. Chapter 36. Chapter 36. Okay, are you ready? I need to stop doing preamble. We're already 3 fucking minutes in. Okay. Can I swear this far in? I swear there used to be a limit to how... I'm starting. Chapter 36. The buck stops here, Ronan said, pulling up the handbrake. Home shit home. In the dark, the Parrish family's double-wide was a dreary gray box. 2 windows illuminated. A silhouette at the kitchen window drew aside the curtains to look at the BMW. He and Adam were alone in the car. Gansey had driven the Camaro from the hospital to Foxway, so he drove it back to Monmouth as well. It was a comfortable enough arrangement. Adam and Ronan weren't in a fight at the moment, and both of them were too startled by the day's events to start a new one. Adam reached in the back for his messenger bag, the one gift he'd ever permitted Gansey to give him, and only because he didn't need it. Thanks for the ride. Another silhouette, distinctly Adam's father, had joined the first at the window. Adam's stomach curdled. He tightened his fingers around the strap of his bag, but he didn't get out. Man, you don't have to get out here, Ronan said. Adam didn't comment on that. It wasn't helpful. Instead, he asked, Don't you have homework to do? But Ronan, as the inventor of sly remarks, was impervious to them. His smile was ruthless in the glow from the dash. Yes, Parrish, I believe I do. Still, Adam didn't get out. He didn't like the agitation of his father's silhouette, but it was unwise to loiter in the car, especially this car, an undeniably Aglionby car, flaunting his friendships. Do you think they'll rest well before class tomorrow? Ronan asked. Because if they do, I'm not doing the reading. If he shows up for class, Adam replied, I think that the reading will be the least of his concerns. There was quiet, and then Ronan said, I better go feed the bird. But he looked down at the gear shift instead, eyes unfocused. He looked down at the gear shift instead, eyes unfocused. He said, I keep thinking about what would have happened if Welk had shot Gansey today. Adam hadn't let himself dwell on that possibility. Every time his thoughts came close to touching on the near miss, it opened up something dark and sharp-edged inside him. It was hard to remember what life at Aglionby had been like before Gansey. The distant memories seemed difficult, lonely, more populated with late nights where Adam sat on the steps of the double-wide, blinking tears out of his eyes and wondering why he bothered. He'd been younger then, only a little more than a year ago. But he didn't. Yeah, Ronan said. Lucky you taught him that hook. I never taught him to break his thumb. That's Gansey for you. Only learns enough to be superficially competent. Loser, Ronan agreed, and he was himself again. Adam nodded, steeling himself. See you tomorrow. Thanks again. Ronan looked away from the house, out across the black field. His hand worked on the steering wheel. Something was frustrating him, but with Ronan there was no telling if it was still Welk or something else entirely. No problem, man. See you tomorrow. With a sigh, Adam climbed out. He knocked on the top of the BMW, and Ronan pulled slowly away. Above him, the stars were brutal and clear. As Adam stepped up the 3 steps to the house, the front door opened, light flashing down across his legs and feet. His father left the door hanging open as he stood in it, staring down his son. Hi, Dad, Adam said. Don't hi, Dad, me, his father replied. He was already revved up. He smelled like cigarettes, although he didn't smoke. Come home at midnight, trying to hide from your lies. Warily, Adam asked, What? Your mother was in your room today, and she found something. Can you guess what it would be? Adam's knees were slowly liquefying. He did his best to keep most of his Aglandy life hidden from his father, and he could think of several things about himself and his life that wouldn't please Robert Parrish. The fact that he didn't know precisely what had been found was agonizing. He couldn't meet his father's eyes. Robert Parrish grabbed Adam's collar, forcing his chin up. Look at me when I'm talking to you. A pay stub from the factory. Oh. Think fast, Adam. What does he need to hear? I don't know why you're angry, Adam said. He tried to keep his voice as level as possible, but now that he knew it was about the money, he didn't know how to get out of it. His father drew Adam's face a bare inch from his so that Adam could feel the words as well as hear them. You lied to your mother about how much you made. I didn't lie. This was a mistake, and Adam knew it as soon as the words were out of his mouth. Do not look in my face and lie to me, his father shouted. Even though he knew it was coming, Adam's arm was too slow to protect his face. When his father's hand hit his cheek, it was more sound than feeling, a pop like a distant hammer hitting a nail. Adam scrambled for balance, but his foot missed the edge of the stair and his father let him fall. When the side of Adam's head hit the railing, it was a catastrophe of light. He was aware in a single exploded moment of how many colors combined to make white. Pain hissed inside his skull. He was on the ground by the stairs without any recollection of the second between hitting the railing and the ground. His face was caked with dust. It was in his mouth. Adam had to put together the mechanics of breathing, of opening his eyes, of breathing again. Oh, come on, his father said, tired. Get up, really. Adam slowly pushed himself to his hands and knees. Rocking back, he crouched, knees braced on the ground, while his ears rang. He waited for them to clear. There was nothing but an ascending whine. Halfway down the drive, he saw the brake lights on Ronan's BMW. Just go, Ronan. You're not playing that game, Robert Parrish snapped. I'm not going to stop talking about this just because you threw yourself on the ground. I know when you're faking, Adam. I'm not a fool. I can't believe you'd make this kind of money and throw it away on that damn school. All those times you heard us talking about the power bill, the phone. His father was far from done. Adam could see it in the way he pushed off his feet with every step down the stairs, from the coil in his body. Adam drew his elbows into his body, ducking his head, willing his ears to clear. What he needed to do was put himself in his father's head, to imagine what he had to say to diffuse this situation. But he couldn't think. His thoughts crashed explosively across the dirt in front of him. In time with the rhythm of his heart, his left ear screamed at him. It was so hot that it felt wet. You lied, growled his father. You told us that school was giving you money to go. You didn't tell me you were making... He stopped long enough to withdraw a battered piece of paper from his shirt pocket. It shook in his hand. $18,423 a year. Adam gasped in answer. What's that? His father came in close, grabbing Adam's collar. He pulled his son up, as easy as he'd lift a dog. Adam stood, but only just. The ground was sliding away from him, and he stumbled. He had to struggle to find the words again. Something was fractured inside him. Partial, Adam gasped. Partial scholarship. His father bellowed something else at him, but it was into his left ear, and there was nothing but a roar on that side. Do not ignore me, his father growled. And then, inexplicably, he turned his head from Adam and he shouted, What do you want? To do this, Ronan Lynch snarled, smashing his fist into the side of Robert Parrish's face. Beyond him, the BMW sat, the driver's side door hanging open, headlights illuminating clouds of dust in the darkness. Ronan, said Adam. Or maybe he only thought it. Without his father holding him up, he staggered. Grabbing Ronan's shirt, Adam's father propelled him back toward the double-wide. But it only took Ronan a moment to get his feet under him. His knee found Parrish's gut. Doubled over, Adam's father snatched a hand toward Ronan. His fingers passed harmlessly over Ronan's shaved head. It set him back just a half-second. Parrish crashed his skull into Ronan's face. Out of his right ear, Adam heard his mother screaming at them to stop. She was holding the phone, waving the phone at Ronan like that would make him stop. There was only one person who could stop Ronan, though, and Adam's mother didn't have that number. Ronan, Adam said, and at this time he was certain he said it out loud. His voice sounded strange to him, stuffed with cotton. He took a step, and the ground slid out from under him entirely. Get up, Adam. He was on his hands and knees. The sky looked the same as the ground. He felt fundamentally broken. He couldn't stand. He could only watch his friend and his father grappling a few feet away. He was eyes without a body. The fight was dirty. At one point, Ronan went down and Robert Parrish kicked hard at his face. Ronan's forearms came up, all instinct to protect himself. Parrish lunged in to rip them free. Ronan's hand lashed out like a snake, dragging Parrish to the ground with him. Adam caught bits and pieces, his father and Ronan rolling, dragging, punching. Red and blue flashing strobes bounced off the sides of the double-wide, lighting the fields for a second at a time. The cops. His mother was still yelling. It was all just noise. What Adam needed was to be able to stand, to walk, to think, and then he could stop Ronan before something awful happened. Son. An officer knelt beside him. He smelled like juniper. Adam thought he might choke on it. Are you okay? With the officer's hand helping him, Adam stumbled to his feet. Across the dirt, another officer dragged Ronan off Robert Parrish. I'm okay, Adam said. The cop released his arm and then as quickly caught it again. Boy, you're not okay. Have you been drinking? Ronan must have caught this question because from the lot he shouted an answer. It involved a lot of profanity and the phrase, beats the shit. Adam's vision shifted and cleared. He could make out Ronan dimly. Appalled, he asked, Is he being cuffed? This can't happen. He can't go to jail because of me. Have you been drinking? The cop repeated. No, Adam replied. He was still not steady on his feet. The ground slanted and pitched with every move of his head. He knew he looked drunk. He needed to get himself together. Only this afternoon he touched Blue's face. It had felt like anything was possible, like the world soared out in front of him. He tried to channel that sensation, but it felt apocryphal. I can't. Can't what? Can't hear out of my left ear, Adam thought. His mother stood on the porch, watching him and the cop, her eyes narrowed. Adam knew what she was thinking because they'd had the conversation so many times before. Don't say anything, Adam. Tell him you fell down. It really was a little your fault, wasn't it? We'll deal with it as a family. If Adam turned his father in, everything crashed down around him. If Adam turned him in, his mother would never forgive him. If Adam turned him in, he could never come home again. Across the lot, one of the officers put his hand on the back of Ronan's head, guiding him down into the police car. Even without the hearing in his left ear, Adam heard Ronan's voice clearly. I said I've got it, man. Do you think I've never been in one of these before? Adam couldn't move in with Gansey. He had done so much to make sure that when he moved out, it would be on his own terms, not Robert Parrish's, not Richard Gansey's. On Adam Parrish's terms, or not at all. Adam touched his left ear. The skin was hot and painful, and without his hearing to tell him when his finger was close to his ear cavity, his touch felt imaginary. The whine in his ear had subsided, and now there was nothing. There was nothing at all. Gansey said, You won't leave because of your pride? Ronan was defending me. Adam's mouth was dry as the dirt around them. The officer's expression focused on him as he went on. From my father. All this is from him. My face and my... His mother was staring at him. He closed his eyes. He couldn't look at her and say it. Even with his eyes closed, he felt like he was falling, like the horizon pitched, like his head tilted. Adam had the sick feeling that his father had managed to knock something crucial askew. And then he said what he couldn't say before. He said, Can I press charges? chapter 37. Holy cow, dude. That feels like not enough of a thing to say. I'm feeling a lot of things. We're all feeling a lot of things. That felt like something. I'm going to take it back to something that I really want to say. I want to mention. It's the active choice of Ronan to always do these things, you know? It's the way that he stayed. It's the implication that maybe each time that he has dropped Adam off, he has waited just a little bit longer to watch him go inside. Like, if you've ever dropped a friend off somewhere and you've waited in your car watching them get into the place that they're going into. It's the idea that Robert Parrish didn't care whether or not this was a public thing because everyone around them never paid attention. But at this point, he didn't realize that Adam was cared enough for that someone was paying attention now. What he didn't take into account was that a person that he could treat this way could be cared for and treated better and cared about in the way that Ronan was. Obviously, it's interesting that truly we haven't ever actually heard his mom say anything. We have just a implied conversation of the past of, in italices, her telling him. The only thing that we really know that has been dialogue that she has said thus far at all has been to tell him not to seek help and that it is his fault. And also the sentence of him thinking about wanting to move out because of himself, because he really cares about his own autonomy. That all or nothing, it wouldn't mean anything to him if it wasn't something he did for himself. Yeah. But, also if Adam turned his father in, everything crashed down around him. If Adam turned him in, his mother would never forgive him. If Adam turned him in, he could never come home again. It's that, and when he moved out, it would be on his own terms, on Adam Parrish's terms, or not at all. Yeah, that's just very I want to feel like my own person. Feels like if you were to try and come up with the thesis statement of each of them, Gansey is very much like, I want to experience something amazing, something truly amazing, and I want it to be something that I can say that I experienced. I want it to be very personal to me. And, in a way that's both the journey and the destination for him. But he keeps on seeking it to have that, But Adam, if you were to say what his thesis is, I think that what he really wants the most out of anything is, to believe he has his own autonomy. And, ow, don't that just hurt? Doesn't that hurt like hell? Because in this moment, the thing that is tearing him away from the potential of this being his choice was Robert Parrish. In a way, but it is his choice, and he's not recognizing it as that. He's not realizing that actually it is his decision to say no, to defend Ronan like Ronan defended him. No, it was actually my dad who did this. It wasn't Ronan. Ronan was being good. It is his choice to say that, even though that all the things occurring were technically external forces. He's tired of being tossed around by external forces, but in a way, this is his choice. Okay. I'm not really sure if I should say anything else, but yeah, Meaningful discussions. Chapter 37. Welk missed the good food that came with being rich. When he'd been home from Aglionby, neither of his parents had ever cooked, but they'd hired a chef to come in every other evening to make dinner. Carrie, the chef's name had been, an effusive but intimidating woman who adored chopping things up with knives. God, he missed her guacamole. Currently, he sat on the curb of a now-closed service station, eating a dry burger he'd bought from a fast food joint several miles away, the first fast food burger he'd had in 7 years. Uncertain of just how hard the cops might be looking for his car, he'd parked out of reach of the streetlight and returned to the curb to eat. As he chewed, a plan was falling into shape, and the plan involved sleeping in the backseat of his vehicle and making another plan in the morning. It was not confidence-inspiring, and his spirits were low. He should have just abducted Gansey now that he considered it, but abduction took so much more planning than theft, and he hadn't left the house prepared to put someone in his trunk. He hadn't left the house prepared to do anything, actually. He'd merely seized the opportunity when Gansey's car had broken down. If he'd considered the matter at all, he would have abducted Gansey for the ritual later, after he'd gotten to the heart of the ley line. Except that Gansey would never have been a good target. The manhunt for his killer would be monumental. Really, the Parrish kid would have been a better bet. No one would miss a kid born in a trailer. He always turned his homework in on time, though. Sorry, I do have to pause. Someone would care, and it would be Gansey, and he'd be like, excuse me, have you seen this kid? Okay. he would be like, that is my best friend. What the fuck? Where is he? Okay. Welk grimly took another bite of the dusty burger. It did nothing to lift his mood. Beside him, the payphone began to ring. Until then, Welk hadn't even been aware that the phone was there. He thought cell phones had driven payphones out of business years before. He eyed the only other car parked in the lot to see if anyone was awaiting a call. The other vehicle was empty, however, and the sagging right tire indicated that it had been parked in the lot for longer than a few minutes. He waited anxiously as the phone rang 12 times, but no one appeared to answer it. He was relieved when it stopped, but not enough to remain where he was. He wrapped up the other half of his burger and stood up. The phone began to ring again. It rang all the while that he walked to the trash can on the other side of the service station's door. "Come in, we are open," lied the flip-around sign on the door, and it rang all the while he returned to the curb to retrieve one of the fries that he'd missed, and it rang the entire time that he walked back to where he'd parked his car. Welk was not prone to philanthropy, but it occurred to him that whoever was on the other side of that payphone was really trying to get a hold of someone. He returned to the payphone, which was still ringing. Such an old-fashioned ring, really, now that he thought about it. Phones didn't sound like this anymore, and he removed the phone from his cradle. "Hello." "Hello, Mr. Welk," Neve said mildly. "I hope you are having a good evening." Welk clung to the phone. "How did you know where to contact me?" "Numbers are a very simple thing for me, Mr. Welk, and you aren't difficult to find. Also, I have some of your hair." Neve's voice was mild and eerie. No live person, Welk thought, should sound so much like a computerized voicemail menu. "Why are you calling me?" "I'm glad that you asked," Neve remarked. "I'm calling regarding the idea that you proposed the last time we spoke." "The last time we spoke, you said you weren't interested in helping me," Welk replied. He was still thinking about the fact that this woman had collected one of his hairs. The image of her moving slowly and mildly through his dark, abandoned apartment was not a pleasant one. He turned his back to the service station and looked out into the night. Possibly she was out there, somewhere. Perhaps she had followed him, and that was how she knew where to call him. But he knew that was not true. The only reason he'd contacted her in the first place was because he knew she was the real thing. Whatever that thing might be. "Yes, about helping you," Neve said. "I've changed my mind." Chapter 38. "Neve, why? Why you gotta do that?" Anyways, I can't say. I don't know what to say. It's amping up in other ways. So many ways. Change. Do you feel the change thrumming in your veins? Not sense, but complex ways of the movement of time. Things are occurring. And growth. Or something. I don't know. Okay, Chapter 38. "Hey, Parrish," Gansey said. The Camaro was parked in the shade of the walkway just outside the glass hospital doors. As Gansey had waited for Adam to emerge, he'd watched them open and close for invisible patience. Now he sat behind the wheel as Adam lowered himself into the passenger seat. Adam was strangely unmarked. Usually after encounters with his father, there were bruises or scratches, but this time the only thing Gansey could see was a slight reddening of his ear. "They told me you didn't have insurance," Gansey said. They'd also told him Adam would probably never hear out of his left ear again. This was the hardest thing to internalize, that something permanent but invisible had happened. He waited for Adam to say he'd find a way to pay for it, but Adam just turned his hospital bracelet around and around on his wrist. Gansey added carefully, "I took care of it." This was where Adam always said something, where he got angry, where he snapped, "No, I won't take your damn money, Gansey. You can't buy me." But he just turned that paper bracelet around and around and around. "You win," Adam said finally. He rubbed a hand through his uneven hair. He sounded tired. "Take me to get my stuff." Gansey had been about to start the Camaro, but he took his hand away from the ignition. "I didn't win anything. Do you think this is how I wanted it?" "Yes," Adam replied. He didn't look at him. "Yes, I do." Hurt and anger warred furiously inside Gansey. "Don't be shitty." Adam picked at the uneven end where the paper bracelet sealed. "I'm telling you that you can say I told you so. Say, if you left earlier, this wouldn't have happened." "Did I say that before? You don't have to act like it's the end of the world." "It is the end of the world." An ambulance pulled in between them and the hospital doors. The lights weren't on, but the paramedics leapt out of the cab and hurried to the back to attend to some silent emergency. Something behind Gansey's breastbone felt red hot. "Moving out of your dad's place is the end of the world?" "You know what I wanted," Adam said. "You know this wasn't it. You act like it's my fault. Tell me you're unhappy about how this is going down." He wouldn't lie. He wanted Adam out of that house, but there had never been a part of him that wanted him to hurt to accomplish that. There had never been a part of him that wanted Adam to have run instead of marched triumphantly out. There had never been a part of him that wanted Adam to look at him like he was looking at him now. So it was the truth when he replied, "I'm unhappy about how this is going down." "Whatever," Adam shot back. "You've wanted me to move out forever." Gansey despised raising his voice. In his head, his mother said, "People shout when they don't have the vocabulary to whisper." But he heard it happening despite himself, and so with effort he kept his voice happening. "Not like this. At least you have a place to go. End of the world. What is your problem, Adam? I mean, is there something about my place that's too repugnant for you to imagine living there? Why is it that everything I do is pity to you? Everything is charity. Well, here it is. I'm sick of tiptoeing around your principles." "God, I'm sick of your condescension, Gansey," Adam said. "Don't try to make me feel stupid. Who whips out repugnant? Don't pretend you're not trying to make me feel stupid." "This is the way I talk. I'm sorry your father never taught you the meaning of repugnant. He was too busy smashing your head against the wall of your trailer while you apologized for being alive." Both of them stopped breathing. Gansey knew he'd gone too far. It was too far, too late, and too much. Adam shoved open the door. "Fuck you, Gansey. Fuck you," he said, voice low and furious. Gansey closed his eyes. Adam slammed the door, and then he slammed it again when the latch didn't catch. Gansey didn't open his eyes. He didn't want to see what Adam was doing. He didn't want to see if people were watching some kid fight with a boy in a bright orange Camaro, and an Aguilin sweater. Just then he hated his raven-breasted uniform and his loud car and every 3- and 4-syllable word his parents had used in casual conversation at the dinner table, and he hated Adam's hideous father and Adam's permissive mother, and most of all, he hated the sound of Adam's last words, playing over and over. He couldn't stand it, all of this inside him. In the end, he was nobody to Adam. He was nobody to Ronan. Adam spit his words back at him, and Ronan squandered however many second chances he gave him. Gansey was just a guy with a lot of stuff and a hole inside him that chewed away more of his heart every year. They were always walking away from him, but he never seemed able to walk away from them. Gansey opened his eyes. The ambulance was still there, but Adam was gone. It took Gansey a few moments to locate him. He was already several hundred yards away, walking across the parking lot toward the road, his shadow a small blue thing beside him. Gansey leaned across the car to roll down the passenger window, and then he started the pig. By the time he circled around the loading area to get to the lot, Adam had made it out to the manicured 4-lane divided highway that ran by the hospital. There was some traffic, but Gansey pulled up along where Adam walked, making the cars in the right lane pass him, some honking. "Where are you going?" he shouted out. "Where do you have to go?" Of course, Adam knew he was there. The Camaro was louder than anything, but he just kept walking. "Adam," Gansey repeated, "just tell me not back there." Nothing. "It doesn't have to be Monmouth," Gansey tried a third time, "but let me take you wherever you're going." "Please, just get in the car." Adam stopped. Climbing in jerkily, he pulled the door shut. He didn't do it hard enough, so he had to try 2 more times. They were silent as Gansey pulled back into traffic. Words pressed against his mouth, begged to be said, but he kept silent. Adam didn't look at him when he said finally, "It doesn't matter how you say it. It's what you wanted, in the end. All your things in one place, all under your roof. Everything you own right where you can see." But then he stopped. He dropped his head into his hands. His thumbs worked over the hair above his ears, over and over, the knuckles white. When he sucked in his breath, it was the ragged sound that came from trying not to cry. Gansey thought of 100 things that he could say to Adam about how it would be all right, how it was for the best, how Adam Parrish had been his own man before he'd met Gansey, and there was no way he'd stop being his own man just by changing the roof over his head. How some days Gansey wished that he could be him, because Adam was so very real and true in a way that Gansey couldn't ever seem to be. But Gansey's words had somehow become unwitting weapons, and he didn't trust himself to not accidentally discharge them again. So they drove in silence to get Adam's things, and when they left the trailer park for the last time, his mother watching from behind the kitchen window, Adam didn't look back. Chapter 39. Okay, I do want to talk about that. Both of them have points, but they are very, very rooted in each of their values. And also, they're very, very rooted in both of their unhealthy mindsets. I mean, unhealthy effects of certain mindsets. Obviously, we all have mindsets, and parts of our mindsets can be unhealthy, and parts of them can be healthy. And there can be that nuance, that dichotomy. But specifically when it comes to Gansey, he doesn't view autonomy in that way. He doesn't view, money in that way. He's not so much shit about money as much as he is about how much how much it means to live, how much it means to be your own person. I don't think that he processes really how easy it is to be bought in certain cases for people like him to be convinced of a thing. I mean, he literally made a call while he was with his parents to send, $30,000 for the nautical department in the library at Aglinby for Ronan's sake. Money is a thing that buys people, and it is a thing that convinces people, and it really, really, truly is, a noticeable thing for him to be yes, I know that this is real. I know that this is true. I know that people, can be bought. I know that bribery and stuff. And he can recognize that, but he's not really making the connection that Adam does of someone spending money on me. In Adam's mind, his thought process is someone spending money on me is them slowly buying me piece by piece. I inevitably owe them, and eventually I won't just owe them money, I owe them myself. And that idea of I owe them myself is probably deeply ingrained in him because of his dad. Because the idea that his father thinks that he is so entitled to Adam's money, despite the fact that Adam is his dependent, is his child. He should not take any money from him if Adam is not willing to give completely and utterly on his own, not pressured into it or coerced or otherwise, but willing to do it because they have that kind of understanding of we are in a poverty situation, and it makes more sense to work together so that, we can all survive and be okay. But he's not like that. He's a bad person. Robert Parrish is cruel. And yes, humanize is not equal to justify, but yes, humanize abusers so that we can recognize why they do the things that they do. He is a person, but he is doing bad things, like we recognize why he's doing bad things is the important part, so that we can be like, people make choices and get to points where they can justify in their own head doing terrible things to people, like hurting your child the entire time that you have them because you think they owe you something. But Adam thinks, because his father taught him to believe that about himself, that he owes people something. Indubitably owes people something every time they do something for him. Their kindness, if it's material, is payment that he cannot pay back. In his mind. And Gansey doesn't recognize that that is a fundamental value that has been forced upon him since his birth, that has been given to him because his father believes that he owes him something. And Gansey believes that he owes everybody something because he knows the position he is in is privileged, but he doesn't understand the extent of which that really lies, I think. I think he doesn't really understand where it is that, as a person who has money and who has the intelligence and capability and kindness and generosity that Gansey has, he believes truly that he owes something to the world and he hasn't given it yet. And because of that, he is so willing to do everything he can for Adam, but Adam thinks that every time Gansey's doing that, he's slowly buying pieces of Adam's autonomy. Just as much as he's concerned that he belongs to his father. He's concerned that in all of the ways that his father, rightfully paid for food and shelter, but didn't provide truly a safe home. But that's besides the point. Every time his father fed him and clothed him and sheltered him and such, because technically he had a job and was paying for all those things, it counted up in his head as like a debt to him, despite the fact that when you have a child, you're taking the responsibility upon yourself to, commit yourself to them being your dependent for nothing more than that is the choice you have made. Your child owes you nothing, After a certain point, they no longer, even legally, like if we're just trying to talk in the most literal terms of trying to convince someone that obviously this makes sense, if the most that they're really gonna take in and be like, okay, that's reasonable, which I hate, because laws does not equal ethics, laws do not equal morals, they're absolutely ridiculous, and they're only reflective of a very specific bracket of people. A very specific set of people have agreed that these are the things that they believe should happen. And even then, we've grown so much in our society to understand that maybe we don't actually agree with that anymore. But that's not the point. But if you were to try and explain to someone like Robert Parrish that, it wouldn't work, because to him, Adam isn't a person so much as a thing. In his mind, he's like, I should be able to profit off of him now, because he owes me for all of this. He owes me, he was an investment, but not in a good way. Not in like I care about this person and I'm investing time into them so that I can be around them when they're later, which is, still ambiguously an okay mindset to have about a person, much less your child. It's like, I don't know, you gotta be really careful of that. I.e. Six of Crows. But that was more of a joke, or like maybe even a Kaz's flirting technique. But either way, viewing a person who is your dependent as an investment in that very particular way also leans into how Robert Parrish's mindset about Adam is very ownership based. He believes that he's investing time and money into this child to make a profitable adult. And he's seeing him make all these choices that could theoretically allow him to leave and slip out of his control, and therefore he's, putting his foot down or whatever. But that's, something that Gansey hasn't really processed. Gansey's experience with being kind of quote unquote owned by his parents isn't the same thing. Like, parents will always have that, dynamic over you of, they hold power. That's just inevitable. Even when you're an adult, your parent will always technically have had that power over you, because that dynamic doesn't just go away because you grow. You can get to more of a peer level conversationally, but truly it's a big difference between arguing about politics with your dad and arguing about politics with a classmate or a coworker, Even in cases of, like, if you have a coworker who is your parents' age, it would be easier to talk to that coworker if you've worked on yourself and gotten to the point of believing that you are capable of, talking to a person who is older than you in a healthy, respectful, and equal standing educationally and intelligently conversation. It's all about how much we believe in ourselves at the end of the day in that specific case. But Gansey doesn't understand that Adam has fundamentally gotten it drilled into his skull, the specific value of which he belongs to people who materially do things for him, in spite of everyone's choices being their own, and Adam could take the time to really go over that complex with himself and be like, oh, okay, so this is why I'm like this, and this. And if you really get to the point of being able to be healthy about it, you can understand that the material things that his father provide for him are reasonable because he's a dependent. And the material things that Gansey provides to him are generous because he is a peer. If a transaction is a transaction, it has to be an actual transaction made by both people. If a transaction of like, I'm giving you this thing and you're giving me this thing is a thing of, like, I'm committing my time to you so that you will give me something, or you are giving me something so that I will commit my time to you, it has to be agreed upon by both parties, which is why a child can never consent to entering into that kind of dynamic with their parents, obviously, because it's fucking born and it cannot do that. It can't. It just can't. That's it. That's my spiel. I'm probably going to rant about the dynamic between Gansey and Adam more and more and more throughout all the books, because I think it's really important to recognize that both of them have points. Adam, it's just both rooted in their different values. Gansey values intrigue, generosity, and he finds such, like, curiosity and knowledge in Adam, and Adam values autonomy and power, and he sees that in Gansey, and they both like to see these things in each other, and they both envy each other, but they also very much so care about each other, and they are always worried that they are making the other hate them, because Gansey thinks he is despised for things that he did not choose to have, and Adam thinks that he is despised for being unlovable. And both of these are complexes drilled into them either by family members or their in general environment, or their mental illnesses. Queen. Okay, I'm okay. I'm going to keep doing this inevitably, but for now we're going to move on. Are you so prepared? Chapter 39. When Blue first arrived at Monmouth Manufacturing that afternoon, she thought it was empty. Without either car in the lot, the entire block had a disconsolate, abandoned feeling. She tried to imagine being Gansey, seeing the warehouse for the first time, deciding it would be a great place to live, but she couldn't picture it. No more than she could imagine looking at the pig and deciding it was a great car to drive, or Ronan and thinking he was a good friend to have. But somehow it worked, because she loved the apartment, and Ronan was starting to grow on her, and the car she could still live without. Blue knocked on the door to the stairwell. "Noah, are you here?" "I'm here." She was surprised when his voice came from behind her instead of from the other side of the door. When she turned, she seemed to see his legs first and then slowly the rest of him. She still wasn't sure he was actually all there or if he had been there all along. It was hard to make a decision about existence and Noah these days. She allowed him to pet her hair with his icy fingers. "Not so spiky as usual," he said sadly. "I didn't get much sleep. I need sleep for quality spikes. I'm glad to see you." Noah crossed his arms and then uncrossed them and then put his hands in his pockets and then removed them. "I only ever feel normal when you're around. I mean normal like I was before they found my body. That still wasn't what I was like when I was. I don't believe that you were really that different when you were alive," Blue told him. But it was true that she couldn't reconcile this Noah with that abandoned red Mustang. "I think," Noah said cautiously, remembering, "that I was worse then." This line of discussion seemed in danger of making him vanish, so Blue asked quickly, "Where are the others?" "Gansey and Adam are getting Adam's stuff so he can move in," Noah said. "Ronan went to the library." "Move in? I thought he said..." "Wait, Ronan went where?" With lots of pauses and sighs and staring off into the trees, Noah described the previous night's events to her, ending with, "If Ronan had gotten arrested for punching Adam's dad, he would have been out of Agilionby no matter what happened. No way they'd let an assault charge ride. But Adam pressed charges so Ronan would get off the hook. Of course, that means Adam has to move out because his dad hates him now." "But that's awful," Blue said. "No, that's awful. I didn't know that about Adam's dad." "That's the way he wanted it. A place for leaving." She remembered how Adam had referred to his home, and now, of course, she remembered his awful bruises and a dozen comments between the boys that had seemed inexplicable at the time, all veiled references to his home life. Her first thought was a strangely unpleasant one, that she hadn't been a good enough friend for Adam to share this with her, but it was fleeting and replaced almost immediately with the horrific realization that Adam had no family. Who would she be without hers? She asked, "Okay, wait, so why is Ronan at the library?" "Cramming," Noah said, "for an exam on Monday." It was the nicest thing Blue had ever heard of Ronan doing. The phone rang, then, clearly audible through the floor above them. "You should pick that up," Noah said abruptly. "Hurry." Blue had lived too long with the women at 300 Fox Way to question Noah's intuition. Jogging quickly to keep up with him, she followed him up into the stairwell and then up the stairs to the doorway. It was locked. Noah made a series of incomprehensible gestures, more agitated than she'd seen him. He burst out, "I could do it if he had more energy," Blue thought. She touched his shoulder at once. Immediately fortified by her energy, Noah leaned against the latch, wiggling the lock open and throwing the door free. She hurled herself at the phone. "Hello," she gasped into the receiver. The phone on the desk was an old-fashioned black rotary number, completely in keeping with Gansey's love of the bizarre and barely functional. Knowing him, it was possible he had a landline merely to justify having this particular phone on his desk. "Oh, hello, dear," an unfamiliar voice at the other end of the line. Already she could hear a significant accent. "Is Richard Gansey there?" "No," replied Blue, "but I can take a message." This, she felt, had been her role in life so far. Noah prodded her with a cold finger. "Tell him who you are." "I'm working with Gansey," Blue added, "on the line." "Oh," said the voice. "Well, how lovely to meet you. What did you say your name was?" "I'm Roger Mallory." He was doing something extremely complicated with his R's that made him difficult to understand. Mallory. Mallory. I don't know how he's saying it, so I'm just going to do normal R. Or normal British accent. "I'm Roger Mallory." He was doing something extremely complicated with his R's that made him difficult to understand. "Blue. My name's Blue Sargent." "Blair?" "Blue." "Blue. Blaze?" She sighed. "Jane." "Oh, Jane! I thought that you were saying Blue for some reason. It's nice to meet you, Jane. I'm afraid I have bad news for Gansey. Would you let him know that I attempted that ritual with a colleague, that chap from Surrey I mentioned before, endearing man with terrible breath, though. And it just didn't go very well. My colleague, he will be all right. The doctors just say it will be a few weeks before the skin heals. The grafts are working splendidly, they say." "Wait," Blue said. She grabbed the closest piece of paper from Gansey's desk. It looked like a bit of calculus or something. He'd already doodled a cat attacking a man on it, so she figured it was safe to use. "I'm writing this all down. This is the ritual to wake the ley line, right? What exactly went wrong?" That is very hard to say, Jane. Suffice to say, the ley lines are even more powerful than Gansey and I had anticipated. They may be magic, they may be science, but they are undoubtedly energy. My colleague stepped quite easily out of his skin. I was certain I'd lost him. I didn't think a man could bleed that much without perishing. Oh, when you tell Gansey all this, don't tell him that. The boy has quite a thing about death. I don't like to upset him. Blue hadn't noticed Gansey having a thing about death, but she agreed not to tell him. But you've still not said what you tried, Blue pointed out. Oh, haven't I? Nope, which means we might do it by accident if we don't know. Mallory chuckled. It was a sound a lot like sucking just the whipped cream off hot chocolate. Oh my god, that's a really good descriptor. Indeed, you're right. It was quite logical, really, and it was based on one of Gansey's ideas from long ago. To tell you the truth, we set up a new stone circle using stones we found to have excellent energy readings. That's dowsing terms, of course, Jane. I don't know how well you know all these things, but it's nice to see a girl involved with all this. Ley lines tend to be a man's game, and it's nice to hear a lady like yourself. Yes, Blue agreed. It's great. I'm enjoying myself. So you set up a stone circle. Oh, yes, right. We set 7 stones in a circle on what we hoped was the center of the ley line, and we twiddled them in a position about in a position until we had a quite high energy reading in the middle, sort of like a positioning prism, I think, to focus the light. And that's when your partner's skin came off? Round about then. He was taking a reading in the middle, and I'm sad to say I cannot remember exactly what he said, as I was so overcome by what came after, but he made some sort of light remark, or joke, or what have you. You know how young people are. Gansey himself can be quite one for the levity. Blue wasn't certain what Gansey was quite one for the levity. Wasn't quite certain that Gansey was quite one for the levity, but she made a mental note to look out for it in the future. And he said something about losing his skin or shedding his skin or something like that, and apparently these things are quite literal. I'm not certain how his words triggered any sort of reaction, and I don't think we've woken this line, at least not properly, but there it is. Disappointing, really. Apart from your partner living to tell the tale, Blue said. Mallory said, well, I'm the one who's having to tell it. She thought this was a joke. In any case, she laughed and didn't feel bad about it. Then she asked Mallory, exchanged niceties with him, and hung up. Noah? She asked the room, because Noah had disappeared. There was no reply, but outside she heard car doors slamming and voices. Blue replayed the phrase in her head. My colleague stepped quite easily out of his skin. Blue didn't have a thing with death, and even she thought it painted a rather horrible and vivid image in her mind. A moment later, she heard the door clap shut on the first floor and feet stomping up the stairs. Gansey was first into the room, and he clearly didn't expect to find anyone there because his features hadn't been arranged at all to disguise his misery. When he saw Blue, he immediately managed to pull a cordial smile from somewhere. And it was so very convincing. She had seen his face just a second before, but even having seen his expression, it was hard to remind herself that the smile was false. Why a boy with a life as untroubled as Gansey's would have needed to learn how to build such a swift and unconvincing false front of happiness was beyond her. Jane, he said, and she thought she heard a little of his unhappiness in his bright voice, even if his face no longer betrayed it. Sorry you had to let yourself in. Noah's voice and nothing more manifested at Blue's ear, a cold, cold whisper. They fought. Adam and Ronan came in then. Ronan was bent double with a duffel bag and backpack on his back, and Adam carried a dented Fruit Loops box with a transformer poking out of the top. Nice transformer, Blue said. Is that the police car one? Adam looked at Blue, unsmiling, as if he didn't really see her. Then, a moment too late, he replied, Yes. Ronan, still weighed down with the luggage, headed across the floor toward Noah's room, saying, Ha, 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 in time with his footsteps. It was the kind of laughing that came from being the only person... Ha, 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 in time with his footsteps. It was the kind of laughing that came from being the only person laughing. This guy called, Blue said. She held up the piece of paper where she'd jotted his name. The place she'd written it made it look like the doodle cat was calling it out. Mallory, Gansey said with less than his usual enthusiasm. As Adam carried the box after Ronan, he watched his back with narrowed eyes. It wasn't until Noah's door closed behind him that Gansey tore his eyes away and looked at Blue. The apartment felt empty without the others, like they'd gone into another world instead of another room. Gansey asked, What did he want? He said he tried the ritual on the ley line, and he said it went wrong in his other person. His colleague got hurt. Hurt how? Just hurt, badly hurt, by energy, Blue said. With force, Gansey kicked off his shoes. One flew over his miniature Henrietta, and the other made it all the way to the side of his desk. It slammed off the old wood and slid to the ground. Under his breath, Gansey said, "Yee-haw." Blue said, "You seem upset." "Do I?" he asked. "What did you and Adam fight about?" Gansey cast a glance at Noah's closed door. "How did you know?" he asked wearily. He threw himself on his unmade bed. "Please," Blue said, because even if Noah hadn't told her, she would have known. He muttered something into his bed sheets and waved a hand at the air. Blue crouched by the bed and leaned her arms at the head of it. "What now? With a lot less pillow in your mouth this time." Gansey didn't turn his head, so his voice remained muffled. "My words are unerring tools of destruction, and I've come unequipped with the ability to disarm them. Can you believe I'm only alive because Noah died? What a fine sacrifice that was. What a fine contribution to the world I am." He made another little twirling hand gesture without removing his face from his pillow. It was probably meant to make it look as if he was merely joking. He went on, "Oh, I know, I'm being self-pitying. Ignore me. So, Mallory thinks it was a bad idea to wake the line? Of course he does. I enjoy dead ends hugely." "You are being self-pitying." But Blue sort of liked it. She'd never seen anything like the real Gansey for so long at one time. It was too bad he had to be miserable to make it happen. "I'm nearly done. You don't have much more of this to bear. I like you better this way." For some reason, admitting this made her face go hot right away. She was very glad he still had his face pressed into his pillow and the other boys were still in Noah's room. "Crushed and broken," Gansey said. "Just the way women like 'em. Did he say this guy was badly hurt?" "Yes." "Well, then that's off." He rolled over onto his back so that he was looking at Blue upside down where she leaned on his bed. "It's not worth the risk." "I thought you said you needed to find Glendower." "I do," Gansey said. "They don't." "So you'll do it yourself?" "No, I'll find another way. I would love to have the ley line's power pointing giant arrows to where he is, but I'll just keep plodding along the old way." What sort of hurt was this guy? Blue made a non-committal noise, remembering Mallory's exhortation to spare him the details. "Blue, what sort?" His gaze was unflinching, as if staring were easier when their faces were upside down to each other. "He said something about losing his skin, and then apparently his skin came off." "Mallory didn't want me to tell you that." Gansey's mouth pursed. "He still remembers when I... Never mind. His skin came right off. That's grim." "What's grim?" asked Adam, coming across the floor. Ronan, taking in Blue's posture and Gansey below, observed, "If you spit, Blue, it would land right in his eye." Gansey moved to the opposite side of the bed with surprising swiftness, glancing at Adam and away again as quickly. Blue said Mallory tried to wake the line, and the man with him got seriously hurt, so we're not doing it. Not right now. Adam said, "I don't care about the risk." Ronan picked his teeth. "Me neither." "You have nothing to lose," Gansey said, pointing at Adam. He looked at Ronan. "And you don't care if you live or die. That makes you both bad judges." "You have nothing to gain," Blue pointed out. "That makes you an equally bad judge. But I think I agree. I mean, look at what happened to your British friend." "Thank you, Jane, for being the voice of reason," Gansey said. "Do not look at me like that, Ronan. Since when did we decide waking up the ley line is the only way to find Glendower?" "We don't have time to find another way," Adam insisted. Gattum? "Gattum," Adam insisted. "If Welk wakes it up, he'll get an advantage. Plus, he speaks Latin. What if the trees know? What if he finds Glendower? He gets the favor, and he gets away with killing Noah. Game over, bad guy takes all." All trace of vulnerability had vanished from Gansey's countenance as he swung his legs over the side of the bed. "It's a bad idea, Adam. Find me a way to do it without hurting someone, and I'm for it. Until then, we wait." "We don't have time," Adam said. "Persephone said someone will wake the ley line in just a few days." Gansey stood up. "Adam, what's happening now is that someone on the other side of the world has no skin because he fooled around with the ley line. We've seen Cabe's water. This isn't a game. It's very real and very powerful, and we're not screwing with it." He held Adam's gaze for a long, long moment. There was something unfamiliar in Adam's expression, something that made Blue think that she didn't really know him at all. In her mind, Blue imagined him handing the single tarot card to her mother, and she remembered how Mora had interpreted the Two of Swords, and she thought, sadly, My mother is very good at what she does. Sometimes, Adam said, I don't know how you live with yourself. Chapter 40. Ooh! Ow! Ouchie mama! Ouchie, ouchie, owie, owie. That is a painful thing to decide to say to someone. Knowing everything that we know about Adam and knowing everything that we know about Gansey and knowing everything that we know that Gansey overthinks about, Adam says some really hurtful stuff to him. And it's sad. It's sad to watch. It's really, really is. But it's okay. I'm okay. And we're all okay. But yeah, chapter 40. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay. You know? Like, yeah. I'm leaving it at that, man. I don't know. It's not funny. I've got teeth. Okay. Chapter 40. Number 15. Okay, chapter 40. Barrington Welk was not pleased with Neve. For starters, since getting in the car, she had done nothing but eat hummus and crackers, and the combination of the garlic odor and cracker chewing was incredibly aggravating. The thought that she was filling his driver's seat with crumbs was one of the more troubling ones he'd had in a week of extremely troubling thoughts. Also, the very first thing she had done after they exchanged hellos was to use her taser on him. This was followed by the ignominy of being tied up in the back of his own car. It is not enough that I should have to put up with a shitty car, Welk thought. Now I'm going to die in it. She hadn't told him she intended to kill him, but Welk had spent the last 40 minutes unable to easily see much but the floor behind the passenger seat. Lying there was a wide, flat clay bowl containing a collection of candles, scissors, and knives. The knives were sizable and sinister, but not a guarantee of imminent murder. The rubber gloves that Neve wore now, and the extra set inside the bowl, were. Likewise, Welk couldn't be certain they were headed toward the ley line, but from the amount of time Neve had spent perusing the journal before setting off down the road, he suspected it was a good guess. Welk was not much for postulation, but he thought his fate was probably meant to be the same as Churney's 7 years earlier. A ritual death, then. A sacrifice, with his blood seeping down through the earth until it reached the sleeping ley line below. Rubbing his tied wrists against each other, he turned his head toward Neve, who held the wheel with one hand as she ate crackers and hummus with the other. To add insult to injury, she was listening to some kind of trance nature sound CD on his car's radio, perhaps preparing herself for the ritual. His death on the ley line would, Welk thought, have a sort of circularity to it. But Welk didn't care for circularity. He cared for his lost car, his lost respect. He cared for the ability to sleep at night. He cared for languages dead long enough that they wouldn't change him. He cared for the guacamole his parents' long-gone chef used to make. Also, Neve hadn't tied him tightly enough. Chapter 41. I'm going to leave that at that because I feel like that's sinister enough for you to feel kind of weird about it. Okay. And then leaves you with a feeling. Moving on, chapter 41. After leaving Monmouth Manufacturing, Blue returned home and retreated to the far side of the beach in the backyard to do homework. But she found herself spending less time solving for X and more time solving for Noah or Gansey or Adam. She'd given up and leaned back by the time Adam appeared. He stepped into the dim green shadow of the tree from the house side. Persephone said you were out here. He just hung there at the edge of the shadow. He just hung there at the edge of the shadow. At the edge of the shadow. Blue thought about saying, I'm so sorry about your dad, but instead she just stretched out a hand toward him. Adam gave an unsteady sigh of the sort that she could see from 6 feet away. Wordlessly, he sat beside her and then laid his head on her lap, his face in his arms. Startled, Blue didn't immediately react, other than to glance over her shoulder to make certain that the tree hid them from the house. She felt a little like she'd been approached by a wild animal, and she was at once flattered by its trust and worried that she'd scare it away. After a moment, she carefully stroked a few fine, dusty strands of his hair while she looked at the back of his neck. It made her chest hum to touch him and smell the dust and oil scent of him. Your hair is the color of dirt, she said. It knows where it came from. That's funny, Blue noted, because then mine should be that color too. His shoulders moved in response. After a moment, he said, "Sometimes I'm afraid he'll never really understand me." She ran a finger along the back of his ear. It felt dangerous and thrilling, but not as dangerous and thrilling as it would have been to touch him while he was looking at her. "I'm only going to say this once, and then I'm going to be done with it," she said. "But I think you're awfully brave." He was quiet for a long, long moment. A car whirred through the neighborhood. The wind moved through the beech leaves, turning them upside down in a way that meant rain later. Without lifting his head, Blue said, "I'd like to kiss you now, Blue, young or not." Blue's fingers stopped moving. "I don't want to hurt you," she said. He pulled himself free of her, sitting just a few inches away. His expression was bleak, nothing like when he'd wanted to kiss her before. "I'm already all hurt up." Blue didn't think this was really about kissing her, and that made her cheeks burn. It wasn't supposed to be a kiss at all, but if it had, it definitely shouldn't be like this. She said, "They're still worse than what you've got." Something about this made him swallow, and turn his face away. His hands were limp in his lap. If I'd been anyone else in the world, she thought, this would have been my first kiss. She wondered what it would have been like to kiss this hungry, desolate boy. Adam's eyes moved, following the shifting light through the leaves above. He didn't look at her when he said, I don't remember how your mother said I was supposed to solve my problem at the reading, the choice I couldn't make." Blue sighed. This was what all this was really about, and she had known it all along, even if he hadn't. "Make a third option," she said. "Next time you should bring a notebook." I don't remember her saying the part about the notebook. That's because it was me saying that part right now. Next time you get your cards read, take notes. That way you can compare it to what actually happened. What actually happens, and you'll know if the psychic is a good one. Now he looked at her, but she wasn't really sure if he was really looking at her. "I'll do that." "I'll save you the trouble this time, though," Blue added, tilting her head back as he climbed to his feet. Her fingers and skin longed for the boy she'd held hands with days before, but he didn't seem to be the boy standing before her. "My mother's a good one." Shoving his hands in his pockets, he rubbed his cheek on his shoulder. "So you think I should listen to her?" "No, you should listen to me." Adam's hastily constructed smile was thin enough to break. "And what do you say?" Blue was suddenly afraid for him. "Keep being brave." There was blood everywhere. Oh, by the way, the line break. There was blood everywhere. "Are you happy now, Adam?" Ronan snarled. He knelt beside Gansey, who was convulsed in the dirt. Blue stared at Adam, and the horror in her face was the worst thing. It was his fault. Ronan's face was wild with loss. "Is this what you wanted?" At first, when Adam opened his eyes from the gory dream, his limbs tingling from the adrenaline of it, he wasn't sure where he was. He felt like he levitated. The space around him was all wrong. Too little light, too much space overhead, no sound of his breath coming back at him from the walls. Then he remembered where he was. In Noah's room, with its close walls and soaring ceilings. A new wave of misery washed over him, and he could identify its source very precisely. Homesickness. For uncountable minutes, Adam lay there awake, reasoning with himself. Logically, Adam knew that he had nothing to miss, that he effectively had Stockholm Syndrome, identifying with his captors, considering it a kindness when his father didn't hit him. Objectively, he knew that he was abused. He knew the damage went deeper than any bruise he'd ever worn to school. He could endlessly dissect his reactions, doubt his emotions, wonder if he, too, would grow up to hit his own kid. But lying in the black of the night, all he could think was, my mother will never speak to me again. I'm homeless. The specter of Glendower and the ley line hung in Adam's mind. They seemed closer than ever before, but the possibility of a successful outcome also felt more tenuous than ever before. Welk was out there, and he'd been searching for this for even longer than Gansey. Surely, left to his own devices, he'd find what he wanted sooner than they would. We need to wake up the ley line. Adam's head was a jumble of thoughts. The last time his father had hit him, the pig pulling up beside him with Gansey inside, Ronan's doppelganger at the cash register on that day when he decided he must go to Aglionby, Ronan's fist slamming into his father's face. He was full of so many wants, too many to prioritize, and so they all felt desperate. To not have to work so many hours, to get it into a good college, to look bright in a tie, to not still be hungry after eating the thin sandwich he'd brought to work, to drive the shiny Audi that Gansey had stopped to look at with him once after school, to go home, to have hit his father himself, to own an apartment with granite countertops and a television bigger than Gansey's desk, to belong somewhere, to go home, to go home, to go home. If they woke the ley line, if they found Glendower, he could still have those things. Most of them. But again, he saw Gansey's wounded form, and he saw, too, Gansey's wounded face from earlier today, when they'd fought. There just wasn't a way that Adam would put Gansey in peril. But there also wasn't any way that he was going to let Welk slide in and take what they'd worked so hard for. Wait. Gansey could always afford to wait. Adam couldn't. He was decided, then. Creeping quietly around the room, Adam put things in his bag. It was hard to predict what he would need. Adam slid the gun from beneath the bed and looked at it for a long moment. A black, sinister shape on the floorboards. Earlier, Gansey had seen him unpacking it. "What's that?" he demanded, horrified. "You know what it is," Adam had replied. It was Adam's father's gun. And though he wasn't sure his father would ever use it on his mother, he wasn't taking the chance. Gansey's anxiety over the gun had been palpable. It was possible, Adam thought, that it was because of Welk sticking one in his face. "I don't want it here." I can't sell it, Adam had said. "I already thought of that, but I can't, legally. It's registered in his name." "Surely there's a way to get rid of it. Bury it." "And have some kid find it?" "I don't want it in here." "I'll find a way to get rid of it," Adam had promised, "but I can't leave it there. Not now." Adam didn't want to bring it along with him tonight. Not really, but he didn't know what he'd need to sacrifice. He checked the safety and put it in the bag. Climbing to his feet, he turned toward the door and just managed to stifle a sound. Noah stood directly in front of him, hollow eyes on level with Adam's eyes, smashed cheek on level with Adam's ruined ear, breathless mouth inches from Adam's sucked-in breath. Without Blue there to make him stronger, without Gansey there to make him human, without Ronan there to make him belong, Noah was a frightening thing. "Don't throw it away," Noah whispered. "I'm trying not to," Adam replied, picking up his messenger bag. The gun in it made it feel unnaturally weighted. "I checked the safety, didn't I?" "I did. I know I did." When he straightened, Noah was already gone. Adam walked through the black, frigid air where he had just been and opened the door. Gansey was crumpled on his bed, earbuds in, eyes closed. Even with the hearing gone in his left ear, Adam could hear the tinny sound of the music, whatever Gansey had played in order to keep himself company, to lure himself to sleep. I'm not betraying him, Adam thought. "We're still doing this together, only when I come back, we'll be equals." His friend didn't stir as he let himself out of the door. As he left, the only sound he heard was the whisper of the night wind through the trees of Henrietta. Chapter 42. "Oh, man! Oh, boy! Oh, man! Do you feel it? Do you feel it coming in the air tonight?" It's not that, though. Do you hear it whispering through the trees of Henrietta tonight? That's what it's actually about. Hold on, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to put my feet up on my desk. And I'm going to read like an old man reading the newspaper. Ow. Okay. Are you prepared? Emotionally, physically, all the ways in which you can be prepared. Sexually, ha ha ha. Okay. I need to be prevented. Someone needs to prevent me. Send me somewhere. I don't know where. I haven't decided yet. Chapter 42. The Meaning of Life. No, that's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Ha ha ha. I'm so funny. I make cultural references that people hear and they're like, "Wow, you made a cultural reference. Wow." One of my most toxic traits is how, on Sundays when I do my laundry and I come back home and I'm hauling like things in, if I got a lot more things than just my laundry basket, one of my most toxic traits is how as a method of not talking about how much I hate everything, I'll be talking about how sexy people think I am. Which is a lie because I don't talk to enough people to even be receiving those kinds of compliments, even if the people that I talk to did, of which they don't. And I would probably only find it weird if they did tell me I was sexy, seeing as, like, a third of the people I talk to I'm related, a third of the people I talk to are asexual, and a third of the people I talk to I don't really know that well. And then kind of like people who are in the middle there. Like you, Schnookums. Well, in a way you're related, you know? But I can't really say that because of how many times you, like, if we still work together, it would be workplace sexual harassment, the way you talk to me. So, I can't call you my sister. Heart emoji with the hands, though. When you're being normal, you're my sister. It's a weird breed to have a best friend. Okay, chapter 42. I've stalled long enough. Are you ready? Gansey woke in the night to find the moon full in his face. Then, when he opened his eyes again, waking properly, he realized there was no moon. The few lights of Henrietta reflected a dull purple off the low cloud cover, and the windows were spattered with raindrops. There was no moon, but something like a light had woken him. He thought he heard Noah's voice, distantly. The hairs on his arms slowly prickled. "I can't understand you," he whispered. "I'm sorry, can you say it louder, Noah?" The hair on the back of his neck rose as well. A cloud of his breath hung in the suddenly cold air in front of his mouth. Noah's voice said, "Adam." Gansey scrambled out of bed, but it was too late. Adam was not in Noah's old room. His things were scattered about. He'd packed. He'd gone. But no, his clothing stayed behind. He hadn't meant to leave for good. "Ronan, get up," Gansey said, shoving open Ronan's door. Without waiting for a response, he moved to the stairwell and pushed out onto the landing to look out the broken window that overlooked the parking lot. Outside, the rain misted down, a fine spray that just made halos around the distant house lights. Somehow, he already knew what he'd find, but still, the reality was a jolt. The Camaro was missing from the lot. It would have been easier for Adam to hotwire than Ronan's BMW. The roar of the engine starting was probably what had woken Gansey in the first place. The moonlight barely a memory of the last time he'd been woken. The moonlight merely a memory of the last time he'd been woken. "Man, Gansey, what?" Ronan asked. He stood in the doorway to the stairwell, scrubbing his hand over the back of his head. Gansey didn't want to say it. If he said it out loud, it was real. It had really happened. Adam had really done it. It wouldn't have hurt if it was Ronan. This was the sort of thing he'd expect from Ronan. But it was Adam. Adam! I did tell him, right? I did say that we were to wait. It's not that he didn't understand me. Gansey tried several different ways to think of the situation. But there wasn't any way he could paint it that made it hurt less. Something kept fracturing inside him. "What's going on?" The tone of Ronan's voice had changed. There was nothing left but to say it. "Adam's gone to wake the ley line." Chapter 43. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? I'm not going to keep commenting every single chapter, okay? She starts, like, dicing the chapters up a lot more when things pick up. So, we do quick chapters here. Like, yeah. Okay, ready? Chapter 43. Just a mile away at 300 Fox Way. Oh, that rhymed. Just a mile away at 300 Fox Way, Blue looked up as a tap came on her cracked bedroom door. "Are you sleeping?" Maura asked. "Yes," Blue replied. Maura let herself in. "Your light was on," she observed, and with a sigh she sat on the end of Blue's bed, looking as soft as a poem in the dim light. For several long minutes she didn't say anything at all, merely picked through Blue's reading selections piled on the card table, shoved against the end of the mattress. There was nothing unfamiliar about this quiet between them, for as long as Blue could remember, her mother had come into her room in the evening, and they'd read books on separate ends of the bed. Her old twin mattress had seemed roomier when Blue was small, but now that Blue was human-sized, it was impossible to sit without knees touching or elbows rubbing. After a few moments of fretting through Blue's books, Mora rested her hands in her lap and looked around at Blue's tiny room. It was lit to a dim green by the lamp on the nightstand. On the wall opposite the bed, Blue had pasted canvas trees decorated with collaged and found paper leaves, and she'd glued dried flowers over the entirety of her closet door. Most of them still looked pretty good, but some of them were a little long in the tooth. Her ceiling fan was hung with colored feathers and lace. Blue had lived here the entire 16 years of her life, and it looked like it. I think I'd better say sorry, Mora said finally. Blue, who had been reading and rereading an American Lit assignment without much success, laid her book down. For what? For not being straightforward, I guess. Do you know, it's really hard to be a parent. I blame it on Santa Claus. You spend so much time making sure your kid doesn't know he's fake that you can't tell when you're supposed to stop. Mom, I found you and Kala wrapping my presents when I was 6. It was a metaphor, Blue. Blue tapped her literature book. A metaphor is supposed to be clarity by supposed to clarify Blue tapped her literature book. A metaphor is supposed to clarify by providing an example. That didn't clarify. Do you know what I mean or not? What you mean is that you're sorry you didn't tell me about Butternut. Mora glowered at the door as if Kala stood behind it. I wish you wouldn't call him that. If you'd been the one to tell me about him, then I wouldn't be using what Kala told me. Fair enough. So what was his name? Her mother lay back on the bed. She was crossways on it, so she had to draw her knees up to brace her feet on the edge of the mattress, and Blue had to withdraw her own legs to keep them from being crushed. Artemis. No wonder you preferred Butternut, Blue said, but before her mother had time to say anything, she said, Wait, isn't Artemis a Roman name? Latin? Yeah. And I don't think it's a bad name. I didn't raise you to be judgmental. Sure you did, Blue said. She was wondering if it was a coincidence that there was so much Latin in her life at the moment. Gansey was beginning to rub off on her, because coincidences no longer seemed so coincidental. Probably, Mora agreed after a moment. So, look, this is what I know. I think your father had something to do with Cavewater, or the ley line. Way back before you were born, Kala and Persephone and I were messing around with things we probably shouldn't have been messing around with. Drugs? Rituals. Are you messing around with drugs? No, but maybe rituals. Drugs might be better. I'm not interested in them. Their effects are proven. Where's the fun in that? Tell me more. Mora tapped a rhythm on her stomach as she stared up. Blue had copied a poem onto the ceiling just above her, and it was possible she was trying to read it. Well, he appeared after this ritual. I think he was trapped in Cave's water, and we released him. You didn't ask? We didn't have that sort of relationship. I don't want to know what sort it was, actually, if it didn't involve talking. We did talk. He was a really decent person, Mora said. He was very kind. People bothered him. He thought we should be more concerned with the world around us and how our actions would affect things years down the road. I liked that about him. It wasn't preachy. I liked that part of him. It wasn't preachy, just who he was. Why are you telling me this? Blue asked, because she was a little distressed to see the unsteady press of Mora's lips against each other. You said you want to know about him. I was telling you about him, because you're a lot like him. He would have liked to see your room with all the shit you've put on the walls. Gee, thanks, Blue said. So why did he leave? Right after she asked the question, she realized it may have been too blunt. He didn't leave, Mora said. He disappeared, right when you were born. That's called leaving. I don't think he did it on purpose. Well, I did at first, but now I've been thinking about it, and I'm learning more about Henrietta, and I think you're a very strange child. I've never met anybody who makes psychics hear things better. I'm not exactly sure we didn't accidentally do another ritual when you were born. I mean, a ritual where you being born was the final bit. I may have gotten him stuck back in there. Blue said, You think this is my fault? Don't be ridiculous, Mora said, sitting up. Her hair was all frazzled from lying on it. You were only a baby. Just, how could anything be your fault? I just thought maybe that was what happened. That was why I called Neve about looking for him. I wanted you to understand why I called her. Do you even really know her? Mora shook her head. We didn't grow up together, but we've gotten together a few times over the years. Just a day or two here or there. We've never been friends, much less real sisters. But her reputation, I never thought it would get weird like it has. Footsteps moved softly in the hallway, and then Persephone stood in the doorway. Mora sighed and looked down at her lap as if she'd been expecting this. I don't mean to interrupt, but in either 3 or 7 minutes, Persephone said, Blue's Raven boys are going to pull down the street and sit in the front of the house while they try and find a way to convince her to sneak out with them. Her mother rubbed the skin between her eyebrows. I know. Blue's heart raced. That seems awfully specific. Persephone and her mother exchanged a quick glance. That's another thing I wasn't quite truthful about, Mora said. Sometimes Persephone, Kala, and I are very good with specifics. Only sometimes, Persephone echoed. Then, a little sadly, more and more often, it seems. Things are changing, Mora said. Another silhouette appeared at the doorway. Kala said, also, Neve still hasn't come back. And she scuttled the car. It won't start. Outside the window, they all heard the sound of a car pulling up in front of the house. Blue looked at her mother entreatingly. Instead of replying, her mother looked at Kala and Persephone. Tell me we're wrong, Persephone said in her soft way. You know I can't tell you that, Mora. Mora stood up. You go with them. We'll take care of Neve. I hope you know how big this thing is, Blue. Blue said, I have an inkling. Chapter 44. Before we move on to that, I do want to say really quick, if you'll recall back in the beginning, there was nothing. Okay. Back in the beginning, at some point, Kala said, I see a breakdown in your future. Might want to get that something or another fixed on your car. I see a breakdown in your future. I don't remember if anything comes up about it specifically later than this, but I think that might be, related to Neve scuttling the car and making it so that it won't start. It might be related to something else. I don't recall. But yeah, I just want to be like, maybe that's that. I don't know. What foreshadowing? Chapter 44. There are trees, and then there are trees at night. Trees after dark become colorless and sizeless, and moving things. When Adam got to Capeswater, it felt like a living being. The wind through the leaves was like the bellows of an exhaled breath, and the hiss of the rain on the canopy like a sucked-in sigh. The air smelled like wet soil. Adam cast a flashlight beam into the edge of the trees. The light barely penetrated the woods, swallowed by fitful spring rain that was beginning to soak his hair. I wish I could have done this in the daytime, Adam thought. He didn't have a phobia of the dark. A phobia meant that the fear was irrational, and Adam suspected there was plenty to be afraid of in Capeswater after the sun had gone down. At least, he reasoned, if Welk is here and using a flashlight, I'll see him. It was a cold comfort, but Adam had come too far to turn back. He cast another glance around himself. One always felt observed here. And then he stepped over the invisible gurgle of the tiny creek into the woods. And it was bright. Jerking his chin down, his eyes squeezed shut, he shielded his face with his own flashlight. His eyelids burned red with the difference from black to light. Slowly, he opened them again. All around him, the forest glowed with afternoon light. Dusty gold shafts pierced the canopy and made dapples of the insubstantial brook to his left. In the slanting light, the leaves were made yellow, brown, pink. The furred lichen on the trees was a murky orange. The skin of his hand in front of him had become rose and tan. The air moved slowly around his body, somehow tangible, gold-flaked, every dust mote a lantern. There was no sign of night, and there was no sign of anyone else in the trees. Overhead, a bird called, the first that he remembered hearing in the wood. It was a long clarion song, just 4 or 5 notes. It was like a sound the hunting horns made in fall. The hunting horns made in fall. Away, away, away. It both awed him and saddened him. Cabeswater's brand of bittersweet beauty. This place should not exist, Adam thought, and at once he hastily thought the opposite. Cabeswater had become bright just as Adam had wished that it wouldn't be dark, just as it had changed the color of the fish in the pool as soon as Gansey had thought it would be better if they were red. Cabeswater was as literal as Ronan was. He didn't know if he could think it into non-existence, and he didn't want to find out. He needed to guard his thoughts. Switching off the flashlight, Adam dropped it into his bag and moved along the tiny creek they'd first followed. The rain had swelled it, so the creek was easier to follow toward its source, wending away through newly flattened grasses down the mountain. Ahead, Adam saw slowly moving reflections on the tree trunks, the strong slanting afternoon light mirroring off the mysterious pool they'd found the first day. He was nearly there. He stumbled. His foot had turned on something unforgiving and unexpected. What is this? At his feet was an empty, wide-mouthed bowl. It was a glistening, ugly purple, strange and man-made in this place. Puzzled, Adam's eyes slid from the dry bowl at his feet to another bowl about 10 feet away, equally conspicuous among the pink and yellow leaves on the ground. The second bowl was identical to the one at his feet, only it was filled to the brim with a dark liquid. Adam was again struck by how out of place this clearly man-made thing was in the middle of these trees. Then he was puzzled again when he realized that the surface of the bowl was undisturbed and perfect. No leaves or silt or twigs or insects marred the black liquid, which meant the bowl had been filled only recently. Which meant... The adrenaline hit his system a second before he heard a voice. A line break. Tied in the back of the car, it had been hard for Welk to know when he should make a play for his freedom. The fact was, Neve clearly had a plan, which was far more than Welk could say of himself, and it seemed extremely unlikely that she'd try to kill him until she set up the finer details of the ritual. So Welk allowed himself to be driven in his own car, now reeking of garlic and full of crumbs, to the edge of the woods. Neve was not brave enough to take his car off-road, a fact for which he was very grateful, so she parked it in a little gravel turnaround and made them both walk the rest of the way. It was not yet dark, but still, Welk stumbled over hummocks of field grass on the way. "Sorry," Neve said. "I did look on Google Maps for a closer place to park." Welk, who was annoyed by absolutely everything about Neve, from her soft, fluffy hands to her crinkled broom skirt to her curled hair, replied, without much civility, "Why are you bothering to apologize? Aren't you planning on killing me?" Neve winced. "I wish you wouldn't say it like that. You're meant to be a sacrifice. Being a sacrifice is quite a fine thing, with a lovely tradition behind it. Besides, you deserve it. It's fair." Welk said, "If you kill me, does that mean that someone else ought to kill you in fairness, down the road?" He tripped over another clump of grass, and this time Neve did not apologize or answer his questions. Instead, she fixed a gaze of interminable length on him. It was not so much keenly penetrating as exhaustively extensive. "For a brief time, Barrington, I'll admit that I was feeling slight regret over choosing you. You seemed very pleasant until I tasered you." It was a hard thing to hold a civil conversation after recalling that one party has used a taser on the other, so both of them finished the walk in silence. It was a strange feeling for Welk to be back inside the woods where he'd last seen Cherney alive. He'd thought that woods were woods, and he wouldn't be affected by returning, especially at a different time of day. But something about the atmosphere immediately took him back to that moment, the skateboard in his hand, the sad question gasped in Cherney's dying sounds. The whispers hissed and popped in his head, like a fire just getting underway, but Welk ignored them. He missed his life. He missed everything about it, the carelessness, the extravagant Christmases at home, the gas pedal beneath his foot, free time that felt like a blessing instead of an empty curse. He missed skipping classes and taking classes and spray painting the Henrietta sign on I-64 after getting astonishingly drunk on his birthday. He missed Cherney. He had not let himself think it once in the past 7 years. He had tried instead to convince himself of Cherney's uselessness. Tried to remind himself of the practicality of the death instead. But instead, he remembered the sound Churney made the first time he hit him. Neve didn't have to tell Welk to sit quietly while she arranged the ritual. Instead, as she laid out the 5 points of the pentagram with an unlit candle, a lit candle, an empty bowl, an empty bowl, a full bowl, and 3 small bones arranged in a triangle, he sat with his knees pulled up to his chin and his hands still tied behind him and wished he could find it in himself to cry, something to relieve this terrible weight inside him. Neve caught a glimpse of him and imagined that he was upset over his approaching death. "Oh," she said mildly, "don't be like that. It will not hurt very much." She reconsidered what she had said and then corrected, "At least for very long." "How are you going to kill me? How does this ritual work?" Neve frowned at him. "That is not an easy question. That is like asking a painter why he chooses the colors he does. Sometimes it is not a process, but a feeling." "Fine, then," Welk said. "What are you feeling?" Neve pressed a perfectly shaped mauve fingernail to her lip as she surveyed her work. "I have made a pentagram. It is a strong shape for any sort of spell, and I work well with it. Others find it challenging or too constricting, but it satisfies me. I have my lit candle to give energy, and my unlit candle to invite it. I have my scrying bowl to see the other world, and I have my empty bowl for the other world to fill. I have crossed the leg bones of 3 ravens I killed to show the corpse road the nature of the spell I mean to do, and then I think I will bleed you out in the center of the pentagram while invoking the line to wake." She stared hard at Welk at this, and then added, "I may tweak it as I go along. These things need to be flexible. People rarely show interest in the mechanics of my work, Barrington." "I'm very interested," he said. "Sometimes the process is the most interesting part." When she turned her back to get her knives, he slipped his hands from the binding. Then he selected a fallen branch and crashed it down on her head with as much force as he could muster. He didn't think it would be enough to kill her because it was still green and flexible, but it certainly brought her to her knees. Neve moaned and shook her head slowly, so Welk gave her another blow for good measure. He tied her up with the bindings he'd removed from himself. He did them up rather tightly, having learned from her errors, and dragged her semi-unconscious form into the middle of the pentagram. Then he looked up and saw Adam Parrish. It was the first time... Oh, line break. It was the first time Blue had felt as if it were truly dangerous for her to be in Cabeswater. Dangerous because she made things louder, more powerful. By the time they got to the woods, the night had already felt charged. The rain had given way to an intermittent drizzling. The combination of the charged feeling and the rain had made Blue look quite anxiously at Gansey when he got out of the car, but his shoulders were barely damp and he wasn't wearing his Aglionby uniform. He had definitely been wearing the raven sweater when she saw him at the church, and his shoulders had definitely been wetter. Surely she hadn't managed to change his future enough to make tonight the night he died, had she? Surely she had been meant all along to meet him, since she was supposed to kill him or fall in love with him. And surely Persephone wouldn't have let them go if she'd sensed that tonight was the night Gansey died. Making a path with their flashlight beams, they found the pig parked near where they'd found Noah's Mustang. Several trampled paths led from the car to the woods, as if Adam had been unable to decide where he wanted to enter. At the sight of the Camaro, Gansey's face, which had already been grim, became positively stony. None of them spoke as they broached the boundary of the trees. At the edge of the woods, the feeling of charge, of possibility, immediately became more pronounced. Shoulder to shoulder, they entered the trees, and between one blink and the next, they found themselves surrounded by a dreamy afternoon light. Even having braced herself for magic, Blue was breathless with it. "What is Adam thinking?" Gansey muttered, but not to anyone in particular. "How can you mess with—" He lost interest in answering his own question. Before them was Noah's Mustang, in the unearthly golden light looking even more surreal than the first time they'd found it. Shafts of light punched opaquely through the canopy, making stripes over the pollen-coated roof. Standing by the front of the car, Blue caught the boy's attention. They joined her, staring at the windshield. Since they had last been in the clearing, someone had written a word on the dusty glass. In round, handwritten letters, it said, "Murdered." "Noah," Blue asked the empty air, though it didn't feel so empty. "Noah, are you here with us? Did you write this?" Gansey said, "Oh." It was a very flat little sound, and instead of asking him to clarify, Blue and Ronan followed his gaze to the driver's side window. An invisible finger was in the process of tracing another letter on the glass. Though Blue had felt that Noah must have been the one to write the first word on the glass, in her head she had pictured him having a body while he did it. Far more difficult was watching letters appear spontaneously. It made her think of the Noah with the dark hollows for eyes, the smashed-in cheek, the barely human form. Even in the warm afternoon woods, she felt cold. It's Noah, she thought, drawing energy from me. That's what I feel. On the glass, the word took shape. Murdered. It began another word. There was not enough space left between the D and the new word, and so the second word partially obliterated the first. Murdered. And again, across each other. Murdered, murdered, murdered. The writing continued until the driver's side glass was clear, entirely swept clean by an invisible finger, until there were so many words that none of them could be read, until it was only a window into an empty car with the memory of a burger on the passenger seat. Noah, Gansey said, I'm so sorry. Blue wiped away a tear. Me too. Stepping forward, leaning over the hood of the car, Ronan pressed his finger to the windshield, and while they watched, he wrote, Remembered. Kala's voice spoke in Blue's head so clearly that she wondered if everyone else could hear it. A secret killed your father, and you know what it was. Without any comment, Ronan put his hands into his pockets and strode deeper into the woods. Noah's voice hissed in Blue's ear, cold and urgent, but she couldn't understand what he was trying to say. She asked him to repeat it, but there was silence. She waited in vain for another few seconds, but still, nothing. Adam was right. Noah was getting less and less. Now that Ronan had had a few moments' head start, Gansey seemed anxious to get going. Blue understood entirely. It seemed important to keep them all within sight of one another. Cape's Water felt like a place for things to get lost at the moment. Excelsior, Gansey said bleakly. Blue asked, What does that even mean? Gansey looked over his shoulder at her. He was, once more, just a little bit closer to the boy she'd seen in the churchyard. Onward and upward. Chapter 45. Remembered. Man. Excelsior. me having the worst day of my fucking life. Excelsior. Me when my car is stolen by a person that I trust very badly and but care for very much. Excelsior. Me when I'm overthinking a lot of different complexes that I have about myself and my worthwhileness and whether or not I deserve things and I'm sad. Excelsior. Chapter 45. For the love of God, said Welk when he saw Adam standing beside the bowl he had just kicked. Welk held a very large and efficient-looking knife. He was scruffy and unshaven and looked like an Aglian boy after a bad weekend. Why? His voice held genuine aggravation. Adam had not seen his Latin teacher since he'd discovered he'd killed Noah, and he was surprised by the rush of emotion the sight of Welk caused, especially when he realized that this was once again a ritual with yet another sacrifice in the middle of it. In this context, it took him a moment to place Neve's face, that night at 300 Fox Way. Neve gazed at him from the center of the circle made from the points on a pentagram. She didn't look quite as afraid as he thought someone tied in the middle of a diabolic symbol might be expected to look. Adam had several things he thought about saying, but when he opened his mouth, it was none of those things. Why Noah? He asked. Why not someone horrible? Welk closed his eyes for a bare second. I'm not having this conversation. Why are you here? It was obvious that he wasn't sure what to do with the fact of Adam, which was fair because Adam had no idea what to do with the fact of Welk. The only thing he had to do was keep him from waking the line. Everything else, disabling Welk, saving Neve, avenging Noah, was negotiable. He remembered all at once that he had his father's gun in his bag. It was possible that he could point that at Welk and convince him to do something, but what? In the movies, it looked simple. Whoever had the gun won. But in reality, he couldn't point the gun at Welk and tie him up at the same time, even if he had something to tie him with. Welk could overpower him. Maybe Adam could use Neve's binding too. Adam withdrew the gun. It felt heavy and malevolent in his hand. I'm here to stop this from happening again. Untie her. Welk said, "For the love of God." He took 2 steps to Neve and put the knife against the side of her face. Her mouth tightened just a very little. He said, "Just put the gun down so that I don't slice her face off. Actually, throw it over here. And make sure you put the safety on before you throw it, or you might end up just shooting her anyway." Adam had a sneaking suspicion that if he'd been Gansey, he would have been able to talk his way out of this. He would straighten his shoulders and look impressive, and Welk would have done whatever he wanted. But he was not Gansey, so all he could think to say was, "I didn't come here for anyone to die. I'm going to throw the gun out of my reach, but I'm not going to throw it into your reach." Then I cut her face off. Neve's face was quite placid. "You'll ruin the ritual if you do. Weren't you listening? I thought you were interested in the process." Adam had the curious, discomfiting sensation of seeing something unusual when he looked at her eyes. It was like he saw a brief flash of Mora and Persephone and Kala in them. Welk said, "Fine, throw the gun over there. Don't come any closer, though." To Neve, he said, "What do you mean it won't work? Are you bluffing?" "You may throw the gun," Neve told Adam. "I won't mind." Adam tossed the gun into the brush. He felt terrible as he did, but he felt better when he wasn't holding it. Neve said, "And, Barrington, the reason why it will not work is because the ritual needs a sacrifice." "You were planning on killing me," Welk said. "You expect me to believe that it doesn't work the other way around?" "Yes," Neve replied. She didn't look away from Adam. Again, he thought he saw a flash of something when he was looking at her. A black mask, 2 mirrors, Persephone's face. "It must be a personal sacrifice. Killing me wouldn't accomplish that. I'm nothing to you." "But I'm nothing to you," Welk said. "But killing is," she replied. "I've never killed anyone. I give up my innocence if I killed you. That is an incredible sacrifice." When Adam spoke, he was surprised by how clearly the contempt came through. "And you've already killed someone, so you don't have that to give up." Welk began to swear, very softly, as if no one else were there. Leaves the color and shape of pennies drifted down around them. Neve was still staring at Adam. Then the sensation of seeing someplace else in her eyes was now undeniable. It was a black, mirrored lake. It was a voice deep as the earth. It was 2 obsidian eyes. It was another world. "Mr. Welk!" Gansey. Gansey. The Gansey is in exclamation marks and italices and has an exclamation mark. Like Gansey. Gansey's voice had come from just behind the hollowed-out vision tree, and then the rest of him followed as he strode into view. Behind him were Ronan and Blue. Adam's heart was a bird in a stone. His relief was palpable, but so was his shame. "Mr. Welk," Gansey said. Even in his glasses and his musty bedhead, he was in full Richard Gansey III splendor, shiny and powerful. He didn't look at Adam. "The police are on their way. I really recommend you step away from that woman to avoid making this any worse." Welk looked as if he was going to reply, but then he didn't. Instead, everyone looked at the knife in his hand and the ground just below it. Neve was gone. At once they all looked around the pentagram, at the hollowed-out tree, at the pool, but it was ridiculous. Neve could not have slithered away without anyone seeing, not in 10 seconds' time. She had not moved. She had disappeared. For a moment, nothing happened. Everyone was frozen in a diorama of uncertainty. Welk plunged from the pentagram. It took Adam only a bare second to realize that he was lunging in the direction of the gun. Ronan hurled himself toward Welk at the same moment Welk rose with the gun. Welk smashed the side of it into Ronan's jaw. Ronan's head snapped back. Welk pointed the pistol at Gansey. Blue shouted, "Stop!" There was no time. Adam threw himself into the middle of the pentagram. Curiously, there was no sound here, not in any reasonable way. The end of Blue's cry was muffled, as if it had been shoved under water. The air was still around him. It was as if time itself had become a sluggish thing, barely existing. The only true sensation he felt was that of electricity, the barely imperceptible tingling of a lightning storm. Neve had said that it wasn't about the killing, that it was about the sacrifice. It was obvious that stymied Welk completely. But Adam knew what sacrifice meant, more than he thought Welk or Neve had ever had to know. He knew that it wasn't about killing someone or drawing a shape made of bird bones. When it came down to it, Adam had been making sacrifices for a very long time, and he knew what the hardest one was. On his terms or not at all. He wasn't afraid. Being Adam Parrish was a complicated thing, a wonder of muscles and organs and synapses and nerve. I'm going to restart that sentence. Being Adam was a complicated thing. Being Adam Parrish was a complicated thing. A wonder of muscles and organs, synapses and nerves. He was a miracle of moving parts, a study in survival. The most important thing to Adam Parrish, though, had always been free will, the ability to be his own master. This was the important thing. It had always been the most important thing. This was what it was to be Adam. Kneeling in the middle of the pentagram, digging his fingers into the soft, mossy turf, Adam said, "I sacrifice myself." Gansey's cry was agonized. "Adam, no, no!" On his terms or not at all. "I will be your hands," Adam thought. "I will be your eyes." There was a sound like a breaker being thrown, a crackle. Beneath them, the ground began to roll. Chapter 46. Blue was thrown into Ronan, who was already crouched, rising from where Welk had hit him. In front of her, the great stone slabs among the trees rippled as if they were water, and the pool tipped and splashed from its banks. There was a great sound all around them, like a train bearing down, and all Blue could think was, "Nothing really bad has ever really happened to me." The trees heaved toward one another as if they would pull free from the soil. Leaves and branches rained down, thick and furious. "It's an earthquake!" Gansey shouted to them. He had one arm thrown up over his head and the other hooked around a tree. Debris coated his hair. "Look what you've done, you crazy bastard!" Ronan shouted to Adam, whose gaze was sharp and wary as he stood in the pentagram. Will it stop? Blue wondered. An earthquake was such a shocking thing, such a wrong thing, that it didn't seem impossible to believe that the world had been inherently broken and that it would never be right again. As the ground shifted and groaned around them, Welk staggered to his feet, the gun in hand. It was a blacker and uglier thing than it had seemed before, from a world where death was unfair and instant. Welk was able to keep his footing. The bucking of the rocks was beginning to slow, though everything still tilted like a funhouse. "What would you know what to do with power?" he snapped at Adam. "What a waste! What a fucking waste!" Welk pointed the gun at Adam, and without any ceremony, he pulled the trigger. Around them, the world went quiet. The leaves quivered and the water lapped slowly at the pool's banks, but otherwise the ground was quiet. Blue screamed. Every set of eyes was on Adam, who remained standing in the middle of the pentagram. His expression was perplexed. He cast his gaze over his chest, his arms. There was not a mark on him. Welk had not missed, but Adam had also not been shot, and the two were somehow the same thing. There was a crushing sadness to Gansey's face as he looked at Adam. That was the first clue Blue got that something was inherently different, irretrievably altered. If not about the world, then about Cabeswater, and if not about Cabeswater, then about Adam. "Why?" Gansey asked Adam. "Why was I so awful?" Adam said, "It was never about you." "But, Adam," Blue cried, "what have you done?" "What needed to be done," Adam replied. From his place, several feet away, Welk made a strangled noise. When his bullet had failed to wound Adam, he dropped the gun by his side, defeated as a child in a game of pretend. "I think you should give that back to me," Adam told Welk. He was shaking, a little. "I don't think Cabeswater wants you to have it. I think if you don't give it to me, it might take it." Suddenly, the trees began to hiss as if a breeze was coming through them, though no wind touched Blue's skin. Adam's and Ronan's faces wore matching shocked expressions, and a moment later, Blue realized that it was not hissing, it was voices. The trees were speaking, and now she could hear them too. "Take cover!" Ronan shouted. There was another sound like rustling, only this resolved itself very quickly into a more concrete noise. It was the sound of something massive moving through the trees, snapping branches and trampling underbrush. Blue yelled, "Something's coming!" She clutched at both Ronan and Gansey, snagging their sleeves. Only a few yards behind them was the craggy mouth of the hollowed-out vision tree, and it was there that she pulled them. For a moment, before the tree's magic enveloped them, they had time to see what was bearing down on them. A tremendous rippling herd of white-horned beasts, coats glinting like ice-crusted snow, snorts and cries choking the air. They were shoulder to shoulder, hectic and heedless. When they tossed their heads back, Blue saw that they were somehow like that raven carved into the hillside, like that dog sculpture she'd held, strange and sinuous. The thunder of them, of their pressed bodies, rumbled the ground like another earthquake. The herd, snorting, began to part around the pentagram-marked circle. Beside her, Ronan breathed a soft swear word, and Gansey, pressed up against the warm wall of the tree, turned his face away as if he could not bear to see them. The tree pulled him into a vision. In this vision, the night smeared jeweled reflections across the wet, steaming pavement. Stoplights turning from green to red. The Camaro sat at a curb, Blue in the driver's seat. Everything was soaked in the smell of gasoline. She caught a glimpse of a collared shirt in the passenger seat. This was Gansey. He leaned across the gear shift toward her, pressing fingers to the place where her collarbone was exposed. His breath was hot on her neck. "Gansey," she warned, but she felt unstable and dangerous. "I just want to pretend," Gansey said, the words misting on her skin. "I want to pretend that I could." The blue in the vision closed her eyes. "Maybe it wouldn't hurt if I kiss you," he said. "Maybe it's only if you kiss me." In the tree, Blue was jostled from behind, jolting her from the vision. She just had time to see Gansey, the real Gansey, with widened eyes, as he pushed past her and out of the tree. Chapter 47. Funky, 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 funky monkey, funky, funky monkey. I'm going to keep going. Gansey only allowed himself a confused moment of a vision. His fingers somehow touching Blue's face, and then he threw himself out of the tree, jostling the real Blue out of his way. He needed to see what had happened to Adam, though in his heart he felt a dreadful premonition, like he already knew what he would see. Sure enough, Adam still stood in the circle, unharmed, his arms adrift by his sides. The gun hung in one of his hands. Just a few feet away, outside of the circle, Welk lay broken. His body was covered with leaf litter, as if he'd lain there for years, not minutes. There was not as much blood as one would expect in a trampling, but there was something broken in his appearance nonetheless. A sort of rumpled look to his form. Adam was just staring at him. His uneven hair was mussed in the back, and it was the only hint that Adam had moved at all since Gansey had last seen him. "Adam!" Gansey gasped. "How did you get the gun?" "The trees," Adam said. That chilling remoteness was in his voice. The trees, Adam said. That chilling remoteness was in his voice, the sound that meant that the boy Gansey knew was pressed somewhere far down inside him. "The trees? God, did you shoot him?" "Of course not," Adam said. He put the gun on the ground carefully. "I only used it to keep him from coming in here." Horror was rising up inside Gansey. "You let him get trampled?" "He killed Noah," Adam said. "It's what he deserved." "No," Gansey pressed his hands over his face. "There was a body here, a body, and it used to be alive. They didn't even have the authority to choose an alcoholic beverage. They couldn't be deciding who deserved to live or die." "You really wanted me to let a murderer in here?" demanded Adam. Gansey couldn't begin to explain the size of this awfulness. He only knew that it burst inside him, again and again, fresh every time he considered it. "He was just alive," he said helplessly. "He just taught us 4 irregular verbs last week, and you killed him." "Stop saying that. I didn't save him. Stop telling me what I should believe is wrong or right," Adam shouted. But his face looked as miserable as Gansey felt. "Now the ley line is awake, and we can find Glendower on it, and everything will be as it should be. We have to call the police. We don't have to do anything. We leave Welk to be worn away, just like he left Noah." Gansey turned away, sickened. "What about justice?" "That is justice, Gansey. That's the real thing. This place is all about being real and about being fair." About being fair. This place is all about being real. About being fair. This all felt inherently wrong to Gansey. It was like the truth, but turned sideways. He kept looking at it, and it still looked like a young man dead who looked an awful lot like Noah's crippled skeleton. And then there was Adam, his appearance unchanged, but still, there was something in his eyes, in the line of his mouth. Gansey felt loss looming. Blue and Ronan had emerged from the tree, and Blue's hand covered her mouth at the sight of Welk. Ronan had an ugly bruise rising on his temple. Gansey simply said, "He died." "I think we should get out of here," Blue said. "Earthquakes and animals, and I don't know how much of an effect I'm having, but things are—" "Yes," Gansey said. "We need to go. We can decide what to do about Welk outside." "Wait." They all heard the voice this time, in English. None of them moved, unconsciously doing precisely what the voice had asked. Boy, scimus quid quertus. In parentheses. Boy, we know what you're looking for. Though the trees could have meant any of the boys, Gansey felt as if the words were directly particularly at him. Out loud, he said, "What am I looking for?" In response, there was a babble of Latin, words tumbling over one another. Gansey crossed his arms over his chest, hands fisted. They all looked at Ronan for a translation. "They said there have always been rumors of a king buried somewhere along the Spirit Road," Ronan said. His eyes held Gansey's. "They think he may be yours." Chapter 48. Wow. We're gonna keep going because I think this might be we're almost at the end, and then we'll talk. Okay, we'll talk. We'll discuss. Once we'll discuss. Chapter 48. It was a fine sunny day at the very beginning of June when they buried Noah's bones. It had taken several weeks for the police department to finish their work with evidence, and so it was the end of the school year before the funeral took place. A lot had taken place in between Welk's death and Noah's funeral. Gansey had recovered his journal from police evidence and quit the rowing team. Ronan had successfully scraped through his finals to Aileen B's satisfaction and unsuccessfully repaired the apartment door lock. Adam, with probable help from Ronan, moved from Monmouth Manufacturing to a room belonging to St. Agnes Church, a subtle distance that affected both boys in different ways. Blue triumphantly welcomed the end of the school year and the beginning of more freedom to explore the ley line. Power failures plagued the town of Henrietta a total of 9 times, and the phone system failed almost half as many times. Mora, Persephone, and Kala went through the attic and dismantled Neve's things. They'd told Blue that they still weren't precisely sure what they'd done when they rearranged her mirrors that night. "We'd meant to disable her," Persephone acknowledged, "but we seem to have disappeared her instead. It's possible she will reappear at some point." And slowly, their lives found an equilibrium, though it didn't seem they'd ever return to normal. The ley line was awake, and Noah was all but gone. Magic was real, Glendower was real, and something was starting. "Jane, not to be blunt, but this is a funeral," Gansey said to Blue as she made her way across the field toward them. He and Ronan looked like groomsmen in their impeccable black suits. Blue, lacking any black wardrobe options, had hastily stitched a few yards of cheap black lace over a green t-shirt she'd converted into a dress a few months earlier. She hissed furiously. This was all the better I could do. "Like Noah cares," Ronan said. "Did you bring something else for her later?" Gansey asked. "I'm not an idiot. Where's Adam?" Gansey said, "He's at work. He's coming later." Noah's bones were being buried in the Cherney family plot in a remote valley graveyard. His newly dug grave near the edge of the long, sloping graveyard lay near the fucking shit balls. His newly dug grave lay near the edge of the long, sloping graveyard on the side of a rocky hill. A tarp covered the fresh heap of dirt from grieving eyes. Noah's family stood right next to the hole. The man and the 2 girls wept, but the woman stared off into the trees, dry-eyed. Blue didn't have to be a psychic, though, to see how sad the woman was. Sad and proud. Noah's voice, cool and barely there, whispered in her ear, "Please say something to them." Blue didn't reply, but she turned her head in the direction of his voice. She could nearly feel him, standing just behind her shoulder, breath on her neck, hand pressed anxiously to her arm. "You know I can't," she replied in a low voice. "You have to." "I would look like a crazy person. What good would it do? What could I possibly say?" Noah's voice was faint but desperate. His distress hummed through her. Noah's voice was faint but desperate. His distress hummed through her. "Please." Blue closed her eyes. "Tell her I'm sorry I drank her birthday schnapps." Noah whispered. "God, Noah." "What are you doing?" Gansey reached out and caught her arm as she started toward the grave. "Humiliating myself." She tugged free. As Blue approached Noah's family, she rehearsed ways to make herself sound less insane, but she didn't like any of them. She'd been with her mother often enough to suspect how this would go. "Noah, only for you." She eyed the sad, proud woman up close. Her makeup was impeccable, her hair carefully rolled at the ends. Everything was knotted and painted and sprayed under control. All of that sadness was shoved so deep inside her that her eyes weren't even red. Blue wasn't fooled. Mrs. Cherney? Both of Noah's parents' heads turned to her. Blue self-consciously ran a hand down one of the pieces of lace. I'm Blue Sargent. I wanted to say that I'm sorry for your loss. Also, my mother's a psychic. I have a... Already their expressions were transforming unpleasantly. Message from your son. Immediately, Mrs. Cherney's face darkened. She merely shook her head and said quite calmly, No, you don't. Please don't do this, said Mr. Cherney. It was taking all he had to be civil, which was better than she'd expected. Blue felt bad for having interrupted their private moment. Please just go. Tell her, whispered Noah. Blue took a breath. Mrs. Cherney, he's sorry for drinking your birthday schnapps. For a moment there was silence. Mr. Cherney and Noah's sisters looked from Blue to Noah's mother. Noah's father opened his mouth, and then Mrs. Cherney started to cry. None of them noticed when Blue walked away from the grave. Later, they dug him up. At the mouth of the access road, Ronan lounged beside his BMW with its hood ajar, acting as both roadblock and lookout. Adam operated the backhoe Gansey had rented for the occasion, and Gansey transferred Noah's bones to a duffel bag, while Blue shone the flashlight over them to be certain they were all there. Adam reburied them to casket, leaving a fresh grave identical to the one they'd begun with. When they ran back to the BMW, giddy and breathless with their crime, Ronan told Gansey, This will all come out and bite you in the ass, when you're running for Congress. Shut up and drive, Lynch. They reburied his bones at the old ruined church, which was Blue's idea. No one will bother them here, she said, and we know it's on the ley line, and it's holy ground. Well, said Ronan, I hope he likes it. I've pulled a muscle. Gansey scoffed. Doing what? You were standing watch. Opening my hood. After they'd finished covering the last of the bones, they stood quietly inside the ruined walls. Blue stared at Gansey in particular, his hands in his pockets, his head tilted down toward where they had just interred Noah. It felt like no time and all the time in the world since she'd seen his spirit walk this very path. Gansey, that's all there is. She wouldn't, she vowed, be the one to kill him. Can we go home? This place is so creepy. Euphoric, they all spun around. Noah, rumpled and familiar, was framed in the arched doorway of the church, more solid than Blue remembered ever seeing him. Solid in form, anyway. He peered around the crumbled walls with a timorous expression. Noah! Gansey cried gladly. Blue hurled her arms around his neck. He looked alarmed, and then pleased, and then he pet the tufts of her hair. Cherney, Ronan said, trying out the word. No, Noah protested around Blue's arm. I'm serious. This place creeps me the hell out. Can we go? Gansey's face broke into a relieved, easy grin. Yes, we can go home. I'm still not eating pizza, Noah said, backing out of the church. Ronan, still in the ruins, looked over his shoulder at them. In the dim light of the flashlights, the tattooed hook that edged out above his collar looked like either a claw or a finger or part of a fleur-de-lis. It was nearly as sharp as his smile. I guess now would be a good time to tell you, he said. I took Chainsaw out of my dreams. The end. And the second book is called The Dream Thieves. I don't know, stew on that for the next week or whatever. I just want to go over some things and just be like, I like this, I like this, I like this, I really like this. Obviously, I really, like the little sequence of, epilogue type shit. And, having to, Blue going and talking to Noah's parents and being like, oh my god, I would not do that for you. No, I would. Well, okay, I don't know who I'd really be doing it for. If I was doing that for a good friend, I wouldn't be able. I don't know if I'd be able to. I think I'd probably throw up on the way. that wasn't Moida. It was just like preventing him from living. Kind of. Anyways. I really like the way that Noah reappears with the, can we go home? This place is so creepy. Like, that's so sweet. Fellas, is it gay to help re-dig up your friend's bones so that you can put him in a place so that he can rematerialize and hang out with you guys again? Yes, it is. It's really gay. Okay, cool. Wow. We did it. How do you feel? I feel really, 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 really good. Yeah. I think The Raven Boys is such a good book. I think Raven Cycle is such a good book. I think it's all such a good book. And if you also think that, then you should talk about it to me in the comments or in real life. Come find me. If you know where I live, or even if you don't, I love being stalked. It was such a good experience the first time around that it occurred. I need it to happen again. Okay. I don't really know if I'm supposed to do like a big, like long review or whatever. So I'm not going to, because I don't care. I was about to say I don't care that much, but I actually do care that much. But I don't feel like doing that. And I think that we did it. We did it. We got through it. I talked about it. I talked about how much I loved it. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. It is beautiful and amazing and such a good fucking book. Yeah. Shaking hands emoji. We did it. We're done. Thank you. Dream Thieves coming out next week. Hey, ooh. Me reading it. The first 20% of The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater, the second book in the Raven Cycle series. Okay. Thank you for listening, watching, whatever descriptor you want to call it. Whatever verb, not adjective, not descriptor, verb. I know linguistics or whatever the terms that you would use for it are. Okay, bye. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you, bye. Thank you, bye. Thank you, bye. Kisses.